Welcome to the Product House, where product people get reals. So I'm Charlotte, and this is actually our kind of second Product House live studio today.
I'm Kiet Trong. I'm a product coach and also an op model designer. So really excited to nerd out with Emma Carter here. So Emma, you're head of design at MYOB and also author of 3 books, all right?
That's right, yeah.
I don't know how you find the time to do it.
We should really bring the books here, or Photoshop some in here.
They're also beautiful.
And I have 2 small kids as well. It's busy.
Wow.
So Emma, your job really is to help organizations understand what design is and isn't. It's not just all about interfaces and aesthetics. It's about solving problems, shaping culture and building better outcomes for customers, right? So really, really keen to nerd out with you. Welcome to Product House.
So Emma, before we get into some of the serious stuff, do you have any product or experience that you recently are obsessed with?
I wouldn't say obsessed, because as a design leader in a large organization, I still do it. I start to put together, a lot of presentations and use some software that is not very nice to use. But I'm a fan of Claude at the moment. But I also...
It's very addictive.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And expensive as well.
Yeah. But, that's my favorite one at the moment from what I've been playing with. Yeah.
Awesome.
But who knows, because it's changing.
And there's so many new tools popping up every day because everyone's vibe coding, everyone's a builder at the moment.
Exactly.
So Emma, you have been a design leader for a very long time. Do you want to take us back a little bit to share with us about how did you actually get into design and how did you move into the product design leadership?
Design is just in my DNA.
So you're born with it. You know you want to do it.
As a designer, so always wanted to do design from when I was younger. I didn't know what area of design, because obviously UX did not exist. Back in the day, I wanted to do design, so did graphic design, set up my own design agency in my 20s. And then so I've been doing it for a very long time. So I was early 20s when I set up my own company. Yeah.
Then how did you get into the design leadership then?
When I set up my own company in the UK, that came about by accident, as a lot of things do. I was actually... I'll go back a bit. So I was freelancing for an agency, design agency in London. So when I finished university, it wasn't long after the .com, so there was not very many jobs around at the time. I was working for a design agency as a freelancer. Then my boyfriend, now husband, so we've been together since we were 19, phoned me up and he's like, "We've got a decision to make." I was like, "Okay." And this is obviously before smartphones or anything like that. He said, "They're going to make me redundant, so we've got an option. They either make me redundant or we move to France permanently, or we maybe move to France for a little bit and then come back. What do you want to do?" I was like, "Well, I don't want to live in France for the rest of my life because I'm in my early 20s and making that big decision to move there permanently. We'll just go there for 2 years to see how it goes." It's okay, cool. So we moved to France, and at the time I was freelancing, and then I was in a conversation with Jack Wills, very well known. Now it's very well known, a clothing brand. So their recruiter said they wanted a freelancer. So, okay, that's great. I can work from France, no problem. So I went through the whole interview process. And then what transpired is that Jack Wills were looking for a full-time designer. They didn't know I was living in France because the recruitment agency had been lying to both of us. So in the end, Jack Wills...
You must be the perfect match. That's why the agency is taking all this effort to line both sides to make sure you are there.
So in the end, when we finally discovered these things, it was agreed. So I had an agreement with Peter, who was one of the founders of Jack Wills. He said that we really want you. That's okay. Well, I really want to work for you, but I live in France, so a bit hard for me to be in your office. So we came with an agreement that I would just work remotely. So I'd work remotely, freelancing, it was almost a year, and then I'd go and work for them full time. So that was the agreement. So I spent my life driving back and forth across the border. So I'd be in France for 2 weeks, back in the UK for a few weeks. And So I've been doing remote for a very long time, and this is, back in the day of very, very slow internet. So external hard drive, carrying all my files around on an external hard drive because your Mac just didn't quite have that much power. So, and then when it came down to us moving back, the time in France got extended, and then I couldn't go and do a full-time job. I was like, I want to have my own company. So I decided to make or break it within a year. So I went and spoke to Peter. I was like, look, I know I'm meant to come and work for you full-time. I know that was the agreement. I want my own company, and I want you to be my client. So anyway, they agreed. So they became my first client.
That is amazing.
And then it went from there. So so I grew the company for 7 years, and then we got it through the GFC, and then we came out. When we moved to France, our friends moved to Australia. So then we came out to visit them. Then they sold us the lifestyle. Then we went back to the UK and decided maybe it's a good idea for us to move. So then
Photo of the Bondi Beach, basically. That's a
then
beach.
2 years later, we then moved to Brisbane, where our friends are. So they sold the lifestyle. So that's what happened. So we moved here and started again.
Very lucky to have you.
It's very fascinating that you knew exactly where your boundaries were and were able to negotiate with your previous boss. I'm not going to work for you. You're going to be my client, right? So,
Yeah.
And then you knew you wanted to move.
But I had nothing to lose. I was in my early 20s, and the world was my oyster. So I was like, well, they either say yes or they say no. And my mum always said to me, if you don't ask, you don't get. So that's the kind of approach I've taken. I'll ask, and if it's a no, then I'll figure a way around it. So that's like how I approach my life.
Very big wisdom there. Definitely, we should follow.
So thank you for sharing that story with us. We're obviously a podcast about product management. And so the big question in my mind is, being a very, very experienced designer and also leader of organizations, what in your mind, what is the role that design plays in modern product organizations?
It depends what company you're working in. So I was at ThoughtWorks for 8 years. I worked with a whole variety of companies in their infancy with design. And at a basic level, like designers kind of act as that glue to bring design, tech, and product together. They act as that, and the customer, they act as that glue. But the role of design is around, like you were saying earlier, it's about solving the problems, but then it's explaining that to the organizations, that design isn't just about creating a nice looking product that works really well. Design can actually solve so many things across an organization. So then it's around mature companies, it's around them understanding and how design actually works and the areas that design can actually help solve problems for, because it can solve so many things across an organization. And I think that's sometimes the mistake some companies make. They think design just sits in product, but it can work in other places.
Actually, how did you do that? How did you introduce design as a concept, especially for company with low design maturity? How did you even start?
That's just about convincing people. So I had a client, it was quite a few years ago, and so their existing product was like 30 years old. So, normal thing that we find in Australia, there's like companies with like products, really, really old tech. But they wanted to then they needed to build a new one. So there was a big discovery and inception going on. And I was in there just overseeing it and getting things set up. And they weren't speaking to their customers to then help define things. So I said to them, look, we really need to actually go and understand how your customers are currently using your software, so we can then learn from that, so we can then understand the workarounds they're making, we can make a better product when we build the new one. And they were really reluctant. And I can understand why they're reluctant. They had customers who'd been with them for years from day one. So, customers have been there for 30 years. They had a huge market share in Australia. So they were reluctant. They were like, look, if our customers know that we're going to rebuild the thing that they use every day that they rely on, they're going to be really scared. And I said, I understand that. I know it's a risk. But are there 5 companies you know really, really well that I can go and speak to? And it was just having that conversation. So they said, the guy who managed all of their customers came to me and said, okay, I found some, but I want to come with you. I said, that's absolutely fine. You come with me. So he organised a tour. I went out to see them and we watched them, how they use the software, asked them loads of questions. And after that, he's like, oh, so that's what you're going to do? It's like, yes, I just want to see how they use stuff. It's like, oh, here's their names. You could just contact them directly. You don't need me anymore. And it was just about getting him over that hurdle.
Building the trust.
Yeah, he built the trust because, of course, I'm just some random consultant going in there saying, hey, I want to speak to your customer. Of course he's not going to trust me. So it's about building that trust.
Yeah, that's actually really hard thing. It sounds so easy for you to describe that, but sometimes getting the customer success team or sales team to connecting you with the actual clients, it is actually a really, really difficult thing. So I really like the fact that you bring them on the journey essentially with you to the sessions and then show them craft.
Yeah, and that's what I've found has always worked really well, is just getting them to actually come along to the sessions, because then they also understand actually what's going on with their customers. And then it gets them over that. Oh, so that's why our customers do that.
Yeah, because this is something really resonated in the product management world as well. And I do recognize that designer also have another superpower, is the ability to visualize everything. And so that's why even sometimes in product management, we always say we are the glue in a lot of this team dynamic. As you say, in a lot of time, I think designer is also a glue with a very different skill set as well. So I do have a follow-up questions around that, because I did work with a lot of organization. I can see some very tense, I guess, relationship between designer and engineer as well. So in your experience, what is a healthy kind of a relationship and good structure like between product design and engineer look like?
Again, I think it's just having that really good relationship and understanding each other's constraints. So, engineers, a lot of them, they want to solve the problem as well, and they're frustrated that they can't modernize the tech as much as they want to. So it's about having that relationship and then working together. So again, I was working on another Greenfields project. They had an old tech system that we were going to slowly strangle over time, and so one of the engineers was, like, I guess you would call them your stereotypical engineer, like, who just doesn't want to speak to anybody, wants to sit in the corner, just do his thing. And I was like, oh, well, I really need help, because there's not very many of us on the team to go out and speak to customers. We've got a short amount of time. So in stand-up, I got everybody to put their hands up. Who wants to come out and help to do some customer research? He didn't put his hand up, so that was fine. But I had other engineers, and I got on really well with the tech lead. So we were good friends. So anyway, the tech lead was like, yeah, I'll help you out, Emma. So I got everybody to do that. And then this one developer, I said, what about if you just come and sit in the room? You don't need to speak to them. You could just sit there. You don't have to take notes. He's like, okay, I'll just come and sit in the room and listen. I was like, okay. And then next time that a few weeks later, and we were doing some more research, he was like, I'll come and take notes if you like. I was like, okay, cool. And then one day he came up to me, he goes, can you come and have a look at this? So he was building something. He was doing a spike. And he said, oh, based on what the customers were saying the other day in that interview, I was like, my God, this is amazing. He said,
Screaming internally.
He said, I don't think this isn't going to work for them. So I've actually developed this, and I think this will work better. I was like, no, that's awesome. And it was just, again, taking him on the journey of him, getting him over that, being scared to speak to customers and realizing that they're nice people. But it's just working really closely with engineers and understanding that they've got constraints and you have to work with that. And I've also found that, especially when I'm doing ideation, some of the engineers I've worked with, because they understand how it works technically on a much deeper level, they can come up with some really amazing ideas of how they can solve the problem as well. So I've had some who've like gone, Emma, I've got this idea which I think has solved the problem, but I don't want to share it with anybody else until I've run it past you. And then they've gone through it. I'm like, oh yeah, that work. And then we've just worked together and tweaked it. So it's that, having that relationship. Yeah.
And if I interpret what a lot of your the themes with the organizations you work with are, it's a lot about kind of helping the clients understand where they need to play, what are your customer problems, how would you solve them. That's a big overlap with what product managers do.
Yep.
Well, in your mind, how do you draw the distinction between, oh, this is my patch or this is my patch?
I still think you just work together. I mean, there are overlaps, but I think there's overlaps in a lot of places. So it's just working together, and everybody's different. So you get different types of designs with different skills, and same with product people, you get ones with different skills. So it's just about finding out where you've got complementary skills, and then you kind of work to that as well. Because some of the product people I work with, it's just finding out, oh, they're really good at doing that thing. That's the thing I'm really bad at. So it's that kind of Again, it's having that relationship and understanding your skills.
Yeah, that kind of remind me of the conversation with Harry this morning as well. He was talking about how each of the, like at the moment, the biggest waste in the organization is about handover. So I think now with all the role, they almost merge together in a way. There's certain things that just happen to be Emma's really good at it. We all have a common goal about getting this value to our customers early on. There's certain thing Emma is like just naturally good at it. There's certain things Kia is certainly good at it. I guess it just somehow organically just work.
Yeah. And everybody's different, so it's just working. It's working to that. But I think the thing is that you're all of you are working towards that one goal of like delivering a really great experience for the customer, and that's what, and also value to the business. That's what you're all driving towards. So it's then just working together to figure out, well, what is the best way to actually get there with the constraints that we've got.
Yeah. Have you got an example of where you've worked with someone in the product space? They're defining the strategy. They're like, this is where we need to be in 12 months' time. And you've obviously spoken to the customers and perhaps had a slightly different opinion. And how do you work through that?
I don't know if I've had that yet. No, because we kind of work together, because at the moment we're working on something where the head of product and myself are working together to define what this thing is that we're working on, what the future is. So we're working together.
So you're finding that there's quite a lot of alignment even as you go through the discovery process.
I've had things where I've had to, with some tech leads, where I've had to really explain design and show them, hey, that thing that you kind of decided to go ahead with without thinking about the customer is actually causing this massive pain point. So I've had that where I've had to then show them what happens. But on the strategy side, no. But I've had it with some larger other organisations where you've got the exec who's kind of, actually I did have this in a workshop years ago. We were defining what the new product was going to be, and one of the execs came with an idea. He's like, oh, I think customers are going to love this. And I was like, no, that's a great idea. Let's go and test it with customers, see if it's actually true. And I wasn't sure if customers would like it or not, because it seemed like it might be a good idea, but you don't know until you can ask. And we did loads and loads of, as part of the research, we actually asked about this thing, and the best quote I ever had was, "Hells no, I do not want to use that." So when we were doing the showcase with them, fed that back. We're like, look, this is one of the ideas that came out of the workshop. We tested with customers; they don't want it, and the exec was fine about it. He's like, okay, fine. I thought it was a good idea, but obviously they don't want it. But we didn't build it, so we saved a huge amount of money and time, so we didn't have to do that.
Yeah. Well, I do have a question around that, because at the moment, I think every single organization have this really creative exec at the moment. I believe they have the best idea. I guess before AI world, there is enough function like product and design, kind of trying to bring in the value about discovery, validations. But now, because of the AI, there's another argument from this exec to say, well, I just vibe code it. Let's just push it out to see what customers say. You are going to see the real a result that way. So that's why there's a lot of these ideas basically being built into the production without being through almost like a design, I guess, validations. Like, what's your experience around that? And
that's one of the things we're actually defining at the moment. And I think when you're doing that stuff, there's companies have been doing it for years, like Netflix and Facebook, all of those that Meta, they're all tweaking their software every day, and a lot of the little changes you won't even notice, and they're constantly A/B testing. They're doing that at its scale, and you won't really notice it. So I think if it's something that is definitely going to improve the experience because it's such a small thing, but it will make it, then just ship it. But when you ship it, you've got to make sure you're getting the feedback to see if you've actually solved the problem. But then you've got other things where it's like, well, actually, we're actually going to be changing something here, like a little bit more fundamentally. So we need to test it somehow before we release it. So we need to make sure that what we don't want to do is end up undoing everything from the last 20 years where we've just got people shipping things without thinking about
the impact,
and do customers actually want this? I am not the customer. So we don't want to undo that, because we spent years making sure that people think from the actual customer lens and not from their own perspective. So we don't want to undo all that. So it's about putting those guardrails in. But then I think bigger initiatives inside organizations, that's when you're still going to need to go and actually validate some of these ideas. Because even though you can ship things really quickly and get it out the door quickly, you also don't want to damage your brand, because it takes a long time to actually get trust and grow your brand. I mean, unless you're in a startup and you're just putting stuff out there, but then you also don't want to burn loads of money and time shipping things that aren't sticking. So I think it's just being sensible with what you're doing.
It sounds very easy, but somehow sensible.
It sounds easy.
So different.
Exactly. It sounds easy.
Implementing a risk-adjusted guardrail system is like, where do we even start, right? So
exactly.
Thank you for sharing that with us. So outside of your full-time job, you've obviously also written 3 books, right? And you shared in your earlier talk around the story of what motivated you to do that from the start. But without spoiling too much of the overall topics of the book, could you give the audience just an outline of the key concepts?
Yep. So the first book was written, I had my own, the agency I had was a full-service branding design agency. So everything from, your traditional print branding work through to digital. And it was through speaking to just clients over the years. And then the one client that I was mentioning earlier who was like, you should put all of this in a book to help businesses like me understand what on earth a brand is. So the first book is all around a brand isn't just a logo. A brand is your entire organization. It's how you show up across all those touch points. And it's still relevant today. So so there's the brand, it's got the brand map in there. And then after working at ThoughtWorks for, I can't remember how many years I've been there. It's quite a few years I've been there. And I was trying to think, people kept saying to me, when are you going to write your next book? And I was like, well, I need to find the thing that I'm passionate about to write something. And I noticed that designers that I was interviewing who were coming in, they had great design skills, but they didn't have that kind of those leadership skills, the stakeholder management skills that you really need when you're in a consultancy. And so out of that came my other book, which is around, okay, so you're a designer, you're the minority, often inside tech companies. How do you make your voice heard? Because so many designers I was speaking to were like, none of the devs are listening to me. The product owner's not listening to me. No one's. So it's actually got loads of stories in there around that. And then part of the book, I interviewed tech and design leaders across the globe to get their insights as well. And then off of that, because of the work I was doing, was helping a lot of organizations improve their maturity and take them on that path of this is what good design looks like inside companies. I created my third book.
Amazing. So how long in general does it take to write a book?
It depends on. My first book was probably faster because I didn't have kids and I had more free time. But with my, I used the same principles with my first book as I did for my second one. I just go away somewhere and just spend time. I was fortunate enough that at ThoughtWorks, they, if you were writing a book, then they would actually give you some time to write a book.
Wow.
So what I did is I said, look, I've now got a deal with a publisher because my first book was self-published. Second book was I got a publishing deal. And they said, well, once you've got a publishing deal, then we'll take it more seriously and give you time, which made sense because they're not going to, so many people say they're going to write books and they never write them.
5 years later.
Yes, exactly. So a company is not going to invest that kind of time. And I understood that. So I said, that's fine. So I was also on maternity leave, so I kind of got bored on maternity leave, So I was like, I need something to occupy my brain.
Very productive. Right.
So I'd sent out all the stuff to the publishers, and then months and months later, I got 2 proposals through. Went with Taylor and Francis. So then I was like, okay, this is how much time it's going to take. This is what I predict. I'm currently on this client. I can do like 4 days on the client, 1 day on my book. So anyway, we negotiated and worked out so I was still billable.
Yeah.
So I was still earning money for the company, but then I had some time to write the book. So it took longer. And then I'd spend evenings and weekends writing it. So once you got the first bit out, the worst bit of writing a book, well, for me anyway, is the back and forth editing. And of all the industries that really need like disruption is that industry, because they don't trust. I couldn't have my files in Google, so I couldn't have like a Google Doc where I'd work with the editor and have a live document. So it was literally, even a few years ago, emailing my transcript back and forth with the version numbers on it, because they said they've had so many problems with security of people stealing people's transcripts. So
and that's more secure by sending by email.
and a lot of them, these big companies, they don't want you to have these like documents where you're sharing stuff. So yeah, it was back and forth. So I'd have all of these files of like version 1, version 2. Okay, this is and then you'd have to break it down to each chapter. So that was the worst bit. Yep.
I'm not surprised. I used to work for Penguin Random House, and not surprised at all. They're very conservative.
Very conservative,
in their approach.
But
as a parent of 2 kids as well, it blows my mind that you have both the discipline and the time to do all this. So it's amazing.
Thanks. It was that's why I'm not writing a 4th book, because I agreed with my husband that I wouldn't write another one till I retire. so that's the agreement, because he's like, we do not have time for books, careers, kids.
Yeah.
And renovation work.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's kudos to him to support as well.
Yeah. I mean, we support each other. That's only the only way a relationship could work. It's you just work around everything. Yeah.
Well, we do enjoy the conversation a bit too much, so we take up some of the time for the audience to ask the questions. So now we do still have 4 minutes. I was wondering, is there any question anyone from the audience wanted to ask? Yes, great. Oh, wow! Thank you.
Thank you. We recruited.
Thank you.
Definitely not AI.
Hi, my name is Eduardo. Just a question about how do you see the relationship between, I'm product manager.
Yeah.
So how do you see the relationship between product managers and designers working on the AI world, where it's very easy for me to prototype something and have 5 versions of that done and tested. So how does AI product and design work in this new world?
Yeah, I think some of these roles will probably blur even more. And I've also heard of some companies going through, like they now have teams of builders. So the same thing like it used to be years ago, where you'd have a T-shaped designer, and then like you've got your specialism, then the
E-shape,
now
M-shape.
you've got E-shaped or M-shaped.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's where you're still going to have people with like particular skills and things like that. And I've worked with BAs over the years where they've designed something like, I've designed this, but can you just cast your eyes over it? I'm like, no, that's fine. That's a normal pattern. That solves the problem. It's fine. So I think it's still around maybe still having a designer in the loop. The same as I was talking to somebody the other day, and she's the first designer in the company who's got access to the actual code base. So she's like, I can ship things, like really ship things. So for her as a designer, she solved the problem. She went through and like coded it, But then she still ran it past an engineer before it went shipped because they ran their eyes over it because she doesn't have that expertise. So it's still around. I think we're still, some of those lines are going to be blown, but we'll be relying on people to cast their eyes over it to make sure you haven't broken something fundamentally, yeah.
I totally get that. I have access to a code base for my company as well, but I'm really scared to put anything without talking to my developer. But developer is equally nervous about everything I want to open my VS Code as well. So that's definitely a good idea. Do we have another question?
Yes, Emma. Just wondering, how do you see the role of designers sort of shaping towards in the near future with AI and everything?
Yeah, I think I think some designers are going to love the fact that they can actually ship things that they weren't able to ship before, so they can actually start building things. And I think for the role of design, it's going to be really nice the fact that they can ship things. But then I think some designers, they may not like doing that anymore. Maybe their role of design isn't what they wanted to do when they were younger. You know, they wanted to design things, and now they've got to actually prompt, and it's a different skill set. So maybe some designers just won't love it anymore. And I've heard the same with some engineers. Some engineers are loving it. So one of the engineers I spoke to the other day, she's like, oh, I've just got all these like little, like she calls them her pets. All her agents are her little pets. So we joked about how it's like she's just got advanced Tamagotchis, and that's what she's looking after. So she's loving it. But then I've heard some other engineers are like, I'm just spending my whole time now just looking after agents, and it's taking the fun out of what I actually wanted to do as a career. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what roles kind of people merge into. But I think as designers, it's still going to be on that, very much on that strategy side of like, where are we going with this? But also it's going to be really nice that we can actually ship some of those things we weren't able to ship before because of the constraints that we had. So hopefully that means we're going to actually have much nicer products for people to use and much nicer experiences, as long as we have those guardrails where we're not just shipping things that just aren't very good and don't solve the problem and meet the customer need.
Thank you so much, Emma, for joining part of Product House experience. That's all.
Thank you. We had a lot of fun learning about you. And if you've enjoyed the chat, please do follow us on whatever podcast tool that you use. Thank you again for participating.